Good morning, everybody. It's time to kick off another session for portfolio reviews. So I hope you're all having a nice morning. Switch on over as well. Right. Good to see all of you here. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hope everyone is doing well. I've been keeping busy reading up on some games industry articles as I was kind of trying to finish them up from like Wednesday's chat. So I got some interesting notes to talk about in just a second. But yeah, feel free to hop on into the chat. Let's discuss. But yeah, hope everyone is doing well. Hope everyone is having a fantastic Friday so far. I've just started mine. Like honestly, I've been doing some like shopping and some other kind of stuff to kind of get the day started. So I haven't even started work yet. So consider this the start of my working day. As silly as that sounds. But yeah, I think later today I'll be making some improvements and adjustments to some of the dashboard functionality because I realized that it could use some improvements. But yeah, that's for later though. We're gonna be talking about two portfolio reviews today. So the first one is from Lars. Let me see, who do we have on today, just to set that everyone is aligned. So we have Lars Maes and we have Elian Zuniga, who we are going to be talking about today. So yeah, looking forward to that. Yeah. Otherwise, we're probably going to be talking about some articles that I was reading on external development in the games industry. Some interesting things going on there, where there was a couple of things that I learned that were like pretty, yeah, not eye-opening, right? Because I mean, so we've talked about this stuff a lot already, right? I try to be as transparent as I can on like where I think the industry is going, and I had the feeling that what we're seeing now is a shakeup. Well, the last couple of years we've seen a massive shakeup in the industry where it feels that a lot of companies are de-risking, which means that they are reducing their internal headcounts. They're relying more on external partners, which means that there's more external partners and co-development studios and all that kind of stuff popping up. But it is really interesting to see that they had a bunch of people come on that run co-development studios. So let me share my screen just to give you a little bit of context. Um, I read through the article here on gamesindustry.biz. The title is "What does the future of external development look like?" And they have like a bunch of people come on from known developers or ex-dev studios, like external development studios, and talking about like their experiences and where they think the future is going to go. So it was pretty interesting. But we'll dive into that in just a sec. Hello, Lily. Good to see you. Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. But yeah, it was interesting. Like especially this part. I didn't know. So like I'm not a business person, right? So I'm an artist. I love being an artist, and I care enough about the business to kind of be aware of the business. And I have to run my own stuff here for beyond extent, but like not to the same degree where some of this stuff gets mentioned. So let me read what's going on here, right? So the first consequence of increased project financing is that it's very likely that game projects will soon start to follow a model similar to the movie industry, where a legal entity is created for each game. Investment can differ between games, and the studio can greenlight each project as it is ready for the next milestone. So this is very interesting. So basically, they're laying out the idea of, let's say they bring up the idea of like Amazon, not Amazon, Amazing Studio Inc. Sorry, I misread that as Amazon. That would be weird because they seem to be like jumping out of the game dev pool as we speak. But let's take the example here of like Amazing Studio Incorporated, where if they wanted to create like a game called, what is the example here, Wizardlicious, that studio, that main studio would then create like a new entity, which can then be completely separate from their own entity, and they will then own 100% of the rights to the game and the thing that they're making, right? And then once the game gets finished, they will then take investment back as a percentage of all the sales, if I understand this correctly. Again, not a business person. But it's interesting that then the end result of that can mean something where if the game is successful, that leaves the studio 100% self-owned by the people that ran the studio because it's a separate entity. And you have like the main partner, like the top company, basically with the choice of like do they retain a stake or whatever they want to do with that, right? But it's very interesting. So I didn't even know that like movies work like this, but they create like a separate entity that then owns the game and all the risk, but also the benefits from it too, as like a separate entity, which is interesting. Um, but they also bring up the downside of this is that that sort of an effect, that sort of structure, will then reduce the desire to hire staff for working full time on a game entity, right? Because you are from the get go deciding to reduce as much of the cost as you can, and you want to reduce the risk as much as you can, right? So usually that means freelancers, right? Because they're not on permanent payroll and all that kind of stuff. They have their own burdens to take care of, and that most of the development will be outsourced. Which then means if you run something like this, you have, again, this is something that we talked about before, right? Like a small core studio that then is going to rely way more on external outsourcing and freelancers and all those people, right, to get the game off the ground, which is interesting. So I didn't realize that this was a thing that was being explored as we speak. But now that you think about it, like that is sort of very similar to what Ubisoft is trying to do now with their structure, right? Where Ubisoft is splitting off into 5 creative houses with all of their individual ownership of their own games and all that kind of stuff, which then makes it interesting or more interesting for, let's say, Tencent to come in and let's say, hey, I care a lot about like your live service division, right? But I don't care about like your Rayman games or whatever, right? And now their investment can be like way more specific to the thing that they want to invest in, right? So I never really understood why they did that from like my perspective as an artist, but reading this and then seeing what Ubisoft is trying to do now kind of makes more sense. That it becomes an easier way to get like external investment because now the investment is more specific about certain items within that studio, right? So that's starting to make like a lot of sense to me. So it's interesting that during reading this, like I made that click as well. I will say that a lot of the stuff that was mentioned in here is kind of very similar to what we've been saying already, right? Or what I've been saying. And just that is something that we're seeing in the industry now, where there seems to be a de-risking happening, which is a very very business term for like letting a bunch of people go, going with smaller core teams, and then relying more on like external developers, right? Definitely a part of it too. What was also interesting, and this is something that I also didn't expect. I don't know. I think multiple people in this article said it as well, but they were talking about the idea of where traditionally you had outsourcing studios, right? Those were studios with like a very specific goal of adding more content to the game, right? So an outsourcing studio traditionally is just focused on like, hey, we need you to make this content. We don't have enough people in house to make that content. You just create the content for us, and then we integrate that into the game, right? Very, very simple way of looking at it. It looks like what is happening now is that this push towards like smaller core groups, smaller core companies, is also pushing up the the reliance or the demand, let's say, where other studios that are working with that main company, they need to be more specialized as well. Because now, let's say you have your internal team that's really good at doing one thing, and then they kind of lost the ability to do like something else completely, right? So now they're going to work with like another partner that is really good at that thing. Let's say, for example, to give it like a concrete example, let's say your team is really good at the visual storytelling, right? You know how to tell like a visual, like a really compelling visual story, right? That's what you're good at. But let's say you want to make an open world game, maybe you're not that good at like, let's say, terrain creation and like building an open world and all the tools that come with it, right? Now you start looking for an external partner that is really good at that stuff, that you can just hire them to do those things, and you can add your layer, your storytelling layer on top of it, right? Silly example, just to give like an example that we can illustrate this thing with. But yeah, it was very interesting. I To a certain degree, like it does make a lot of sense, right? Like if we talk about this stuff out in the open, it makes a lot of sense that if you shrink your core developments down, that you are also creating a network of studios that specialize in these things that you then lost the ability to do internally, right? Um, Very interesting. There's also a couple of mentions of what we've also seen is that a lot of the investment, or like not investment necessarily, but a lot of studios that are coming up in the external development world now are usually in more affordable and cheaper regions, right? Because there's a lot of pressure, there's a lot of financial pressure on making games like cheaper. And some people in here said that um that how did they word it again? I'll see if I can find it in here. Mm. Da-da-da. Yeah, so this is Claude Bordelot from Winking Studio saying that the winning model is not simply East versus West or low cost versus high cost. It is trust, which is interesting. So I think I know where he's coming from, right? Because in a very traditional sense, the reason why you go with, let's say, a Western studio is because they speak the same language. Traditionally, a lot of the development pipelines have been developed and have like a very robust history and lineage within like the Western sphere of development, right? Where you incur certain it becomes more complex, let's say, to do those collaborations with people that might not be as fluent in the language, that might not have like the history, the historical nature of those pipelines and all that kind of stuff, right? However, I do think that that has like largely changed though. I do feel that we are still like really underestimating like how quick like the the East has evolved in just like getting up to speed with like the pipelines and the creativity, and like to a certain degree, like even just like the leadership, right? Like the creative direction and stuff. So that was like pretty interesting, pretty interesting. But yeah, there was a lot of interesting things that I learned from this article. um I know that it's not like an exciting topic to be talking about, but yeah, it is. I think what I like about reading up on these things is that I get a sense of where the industry is kind of headed. And that gives me a better look into how I need to then prepare our students, let's say, or the community members for that future as well. So that's why I really, really like it. But yeah, hopefully that makes sense. A couple of my insights here. So I would definitely recommend go and checking out like gamesindustry.biz. It's more the business side of things, right? So it's not that exciting for most students necessarily, but I think it gives you like a good indication of where the industry is kind of headed. So I'll share the article again. Go check it out. Go read it for yourself. Um, Hello, Marius. Hello, Pewdie. Hello, Mimachu. Lily is saying 5 creative houses feels very Game of Thrones. I know, I know, and it takes a long while to do that transition, right? So it's gonna be a while before that transition has finally been completed. Um, But it does make way more sense now if you look at it from like the business perspective, even though it is a crazy move though still. Like just shifting around your IP and all that kind of stuff. Man, that's scary to be doing that. Anyways, what else has been happening? Um, I've been doing a fair amount of personal work again, which is good. I've been having a lot of fun with that. I'm still sculpting away and doing kind of some like sculpting shenanigans in Blender, which has been really fun. I've been enjoying a lot of that stuff. We're also like really preparing for Gamescom as well. So we are basically we're starting to reach out to a bunch of people, so that hopefully we can get like a bunch of meetings. And if you are there yourself, please feel free to reach out, send me a DM, whether that's on LinkedIn or on Discord, and let's meet up because I would love to meet people out there. MSart is saying hello, Tim and gang. Hello, MSart. Good to see you. But yeah, so yeah, we've been busy with prep for Gamescom. I'm super hyped about it. Yeah, just a bunch of like admin stuff happening in the back, really. So yeah, that's also been happening. Anyway, for people that are new, first of all, welcome to Portfolio Reviews. Um, I really appreciate you being here. I will also say I'm open to any questions. So I have over 10 years of experience working in the games industry, most of it in AAA. Well, yeah, I would say like most of it in AAA. Let's call it like that. Sometimes it's hard to define. But if you want to ask me any questions, anything that can help you like take your art to the next level, anything like that, feel free to drop it in the chat and we can talk about it. But without further ado, let's switch it on over to some portfolio reviews, shall we? So the way that we go about things here is you can submit your portfolio reviews if you become a member and you get to like fill in this little form here. You get added to the backlog down here as well. So the backlog is kind of shrinking over time, which is good, which means that people get to see their feedback sooner rather than later, which is nice. But yeah, we grade your portfolio on hireability, presentation, artistic skills, and technical skills. Those are generally like the four parameters that I look at. And then at the end of a portfolio review, we get to fill in some scores, and I'll tell you what stood out on the portfolio and how to improve for the future. So let's kick it off with Lars Maes, the first person that we have for today. Lars is saying, I want to work in the games industry. I would like to work in a studio in Europe, not too far from Belgium. And I like medieval games, so working at Warhorse, CD Projekt Red, Techland, Larian would be nice. Okay. Cool. So I like medieval games. Interesting. Interesting. Because that gives me a good indication of like what we need to focus on, right? So let's have a look here. We're going to start with the first impressions. Let me just scoot this thing on over. There we go. So, a passionate 3D environment artist with a drive to create quality stuff and a fanboy for medieval stuff. Nice. Previously, a 3D environment art intern at Larian Studios, ended mid-June of 2025. Nice one. I would. What I mentioned when it ended, I I wouldn't mention that necessarily. It's a small thing, right? It's not going to make a huge difference, but I think it could be nice to just kind of leave that somewhat ambiguous, that people know that you work for Larian Studios, not that you worked with them like almost a year ago now, right? It's a small but subtle difference, but it's about managing sort of expectations, I guess. I mean, they're still going to find out when they look at your CV, for example, but still, yeah, I would potentially not have that here. And then you have your sketch having here too. Um, hmm. You have your sketch tab here. How do I would not have it here necessarily because you have it here already, right? And and again, like it's also you're saying like, hey, look, this is my portfolio, but I have this other portfolio here as well. You know, so it's managing where you channel people towards, right? So I would just remove this, keep it here. That's fine. That's what people expect, but don't do like any additional callouts here. Again, small thing, but yeah, you don't want to be sending people around all the time. Let's see about page. Let me actually check out your other socials here as well. Do, do, do. So I guess this is sort of like a blend between yeah, this is sort of like personal stuff coming into it as well, right? Um I mean, I have to call it out but just because I saw it, right? But like something like this, I know, very innocent. I actually find it pretty funny, but think about it if a potential employer sees that, right? Because I can find it funny, but if another employer or recruiter says, like, hey, what the fuck's going on here? Okay, we're just gonna skip to the next one, right? It's about like de-risking as much of your public profile as possible, right? Um especially for like recruiters, right? I think I would rather play it safe than risk um risk losing opportunities, I would say. Lydia is saying employer instantly hired. That's a risk. I would say there might be employers that are like, oh my god, this guy has some like I don't know funny bones, you know. But yeah, it's always a risk, right? So that's where I would always lean towards like the professional and only showing that rather than sharing the personal too much. That's at least my opinion on it, right? MSR is saying, I know, right? I see cat instant hire, to be honest. I am a funny guy. Yeah, I mean, so there's nothing wrong with that necessarily, right? I think it's good to show that off during the interview, for example. Um, that's probably the best way to show it, right? Like that's a moment where you can really let your personality shine. No, Arvid is saying, "Hi, oh, this art looks a lot like from the DIE assignments." Yes, you're correct, 100%. Um, Yeah, it is interesting. I've always been a person who leans more towards like the professional, right? Again, there's nothing wrong with having like your personal thing being a mix of this, but then to call it out on your art station, I don't know. It's a risk. It can be risky. Let's see, intern environment art, and then Draconic Interactive as a freelancer as well. Okay, that's cool. Concepting and making a 3D environment for Dragon Twin. Oh yeah, yeah. I had a sneak peek. That's this environment then. Makes sense. I would also say it would be good to have a CV anywhere, right? I know that there's like restrictions if you're not a pro member, that you can't add your CV, which is fine, I guess. But then do add it on your LinkedIn, right? It's always good to have like a CV that people can just download and save and share with other people in the studio. I think making it easier and just having it available is good. But yeah, overall, like pretty good impressions. Like also good impressions in terms of the art. Um, the one thing that is interesting, you said, "Hey, I have a specific love for like medieval stuff." We're kind of seeing that more recently. But if we remove these two things, right, and if we ignore the whip stuff, because in general, like your portfolio, in my opinion, is not for whip stuff, right? If you put it on your blog post or your social media, that's fine. Not on ArtStation. Maybe unless you're doing like I don't know, you want to showcase what you're working on for like an employer that you have a talk with in like an hour or something like that, maybe, right? But in general, I'm not a big fan of like whip projects on your portfolio because the first thing that I'll do is like, oh, you called this whip? It's from 3 months ago. Why is it not done yet? Right? That is it. That's the first thing that I'll do to have a look at it, right? Um, cool. We'll talk about like how all that stuff looks like in the end, right? But I think still, first impressions are pretty good. We can kind of talk about like the Unreal Engine logos. I'm not a big fan of the Unreal Engine logos on thumbnails because I think they take up like too much space, and in general, like I don't really care about like having a logo on there. To me, it doesn't really show anything. It doesn't really show anything interesting, just having the logo on there. Again, the reason why we did the Unreal Engine logos in the beginning is when Unreal Engine came up, Unreal Engine 4 specifically came up, like a lot of new stuff was being built and it would look like really unique. And that's why people started adding logos to it because they wanted to call out, like, hey, I'm switching over kind of thing. I think that's done. I think just let the art speak for itself. That's fine. For me, it shows the game ready environment, but you figure that out once you click on it, though, right? Because here's the thing, like I've heard some similar comments from people that say that like, oh yeah, but like you kind of want to show that it's made in like Unreal so that it is like a game ready environment, right? But here's the thing. If a recruiter is gonna look for people that have Unreal Engine experience, what will they do? They will go to the Unreal Engine tab. So they're already in a tab where all of this is going to be built in Unreal. So then you adding like an Unreal Engine logo doesn't make sense. Plus, I would argue that from like 90% of the things that I'm seeing, I know it's Unreal just by looking at it. So I can sort of get the argument. It's just I always find it like a waste of space in terms of like your thumbnail design. Where I think if you want to do something else with it and you want to do something where you say like, hey, look, I'm gonna think about project names and I'm gonna make the thumbnails very similar. That showcases consistency and creativity that goes beyond what everyone else is doing. I would rather have you do that and fill up the thumbnail a little bit with those elements than just like slapping the Unreal Engine logo onto it. That's at least been my opinion. Feel free to do with that what you want. Um, or is just running in Unreal Engine. Yeah, yeah, but like again, like I can see that these things are like made in Unreal. You know, I don't know. It's up to you what you do with that. Honestly, that is just that's always been my opinion on it. And don't get me wrong, I've done the Unreal Engine logos on things as well. Um, but I think, and again, like my portfolio is like really out of date, right? So don't use my one as an example necessarily. But I prefer to see something like this where the whole portfolio is kind of thought out in like a consistent way, and there's like, you know, this portfolio, for example, shows that you think about how to present yourself in a consistent way rather than adding an Unreal Engine logo to it, right? And it doesn't need to be laid out like this. It can be whatever you want, right? Like some people do like really interesting presentation styles when it comes to their work. Let me think. So I think I have like a couple of examples here. This is not available yet because I got caught off for like a bunch of other things. But you can do like a bunch of like really cool presentations, where you just have like consistent logos. Again, just here like a great example again, right? I know that this is all professional work, but you can use the same sort of ideas and apply them to your personal work as well, right? Let's see. I have like a bunch more examples that I haven't added yet, actually, that I'm seeing. Let me actually take a quick look here. We're gonna go behind the scenes. Let me actually see. Okay, here's a couple of examples, right? I know it's a little cropped, it's a little bit hidden behind the thing, but these are like beautiful thumbnail designs, right? Um, and sure, like some of them use the Unreal Engine logo in it. Like even in these cases, I would make the argument that like it's even more of a waste of space in my opinion because you then go above and beyond and presenting everything in a beautiful way and then you slap like a logo on it. So these two I would have them without the logo, but still just the idea that you can do like thumbnail design, you can make it like pretty interesting, and imagine then your entire portfolio kind of looking like that consistently, right? That's going to be beautiful. I don't know if I have more examples here. No, not really. These are like the examples that I've already shown. Those thumbnails look good indeed. Yeah, and the thing that I also want to highlight, right? I try to get like a good selection of like a good varied selection where you can keep something like really simple, where this is Martin Hoff's work, really simple logo design, and you just add that on there. Nice. If you want to do something about like project titles, that's cool as well. If you're doing something more professional and you have multiple posts, that's cool too. But sometimes like a simple border with like a small logo that you just came up with yourself can be the thing that makes your work like really professional, right? So that is definitely something to think about as well. Um, 'Cause yeah, and it's thumbnail design, right? We haven't even talked about like the artwork itself yet. So let's do that now. I mean, sorry, saying, man, I can't wait for the academy. Yes, we're talking to a bunch of people that are gonna start developing new content for us, and I'm still writing up like a bunch of content, but I have to go in between like fixing stuff that gets broken and then hopefully doing academy stuff at the same time too. Emmy started saying, if you really want to add the logo, it could be like 50% smaller on the thumbnail, to be honest. Yeah, yeah. Or just having like the logo itself and making it smaller. Again, I will always go back to like you can probably use that space in like a better way. But if you really feel like you want to add the logo in there, that's fine. Just make it like small, you know? And the same, I will apply the same sort of thinking. This has been a critique even for people that participate in our team challenges as well, right? Some people make the logos like way too big. Like even if you want to add the to be honest logo to it, make it small, you know? Like you can keep it small, let the art do the talking, and then you can have like some additional trinkets on the side. I think that's completely fine. Okay, let's have a look at some of the stuff on here then. Um, as I said before, like we're going to be focusing most on presentation and actual like portfolio, right? So we're not going to be diving into like artistic feedback. Maybe we'll pick up like a couple of highlights at the end, but yeah, I don't want to get carried away in like giving like art feedback necessarily. Oh my god, I didn't even realize that it had like a very subtle text here next to it as well. Cool. Yeah, even from 2 years ago, like this looks really nice, well presented. Lighting looks like really well done. We're gonna get started out with the stereotypical, game art. I want to see breakdowns. Show me the textures. Show me the wireframe. Show me all that good stuff. I want to see it broken down. I want to see how smart you were with your geometry and how you done the textures. So we're probably gonna be talking about that like a little bit as well. A lot of people are downloading a model on Sketchfab, so if you want it for free, you can go here. Okay, that's an interesting addition because you're basically giving people free content, right? Which can actually be a good thing to drive more traffic towards your portfolio, right? So I'm thinking that even in your thumbnails, right? I don't know if this is going to be a consistent theme with some of the other things, but you could maybe add that in your thumbnail and say like free download. I know it's sort of like eye catchy on its and trying to like grab your attention a bit much, right? But I think that is a great driver for people to have something that they can just get for free and it drives traffic towards your portfolio, right? I kind of did the same thing when I was doing a lot of tutorials, right? You just add like tutorial in the title and then people know that they're going to get some value out of it rather than you just showing off your work. And that can be a good driver of traffic towards your portfolio. So I like that thinking already. I want you to even like emphasize that a little bit more. So whenever you do something like this, like feel free to call it out in a thumbnail. Again, make it like relatively small, but make it readable, right? So that people know that it's free. I think that's an interesting thing to do. Interesting opportunity there. Arvid is saying, I guess you can see the wireframe on Sketchfab. Yes. Here's the thing though. A lot of recruiters are going to do exactly the same thing that I did, right? They're not going to click on anything interactive because and I will spend a lot of time on your portfolio right now, right? And I say this every session. I take my time going through your portfolio. I can guarantee you that recruiters or people in a hiring position, they have maybe maximum maximum 5 minutes, right? And that 5 minutes is already built on you showing a lot of potential and they want to invest time in looking at your portfolio, right? But whenever you're trying, wherever you're adding something to your portfolio and you're asking a person to do like an additional click, it takes a lot of their time, right? And a lot of people are not going to spend the time to do that. So, like like Lily was saying, you can just show off the wireframe in the render, just do that, make it easy, because then I'm immediately going to see it, right? Because it takes a little bit of time, to load in. I need to go here, I need to go here. Cool, right? We got the wireframe. However, no one's going to do this if they have to look through like 100 applications a day. There's no way. There's no way. So that's why one of my top priorities whenever I talk about portfolio reviews is reducing friction. So this is an old piece, Lars, but just using it as an example, right? I'm sure that this is going to improve over time. But yeah, just as an example for people out there that are listening to this, reduce friction wherever you can. Just have the wireframe in like a static image that loads immediately. Cool. Continuing on to the next project. Oh, cool little presentation here. Very, very on brand. It's almost like you want this to be like a widescreen screenshot, and that should be like the main one because it adds like a lot of story. And then these can be used for like the breakdown, right? Yeah. I like the way it's done the lighting. I think it's very well presented, very clean. I would still prefer to see this one higher, right? But yeah, same things apply. Show me the game art, all that kind of stuff. We're not going to dive into it too much. But yeah, there's an opportunity here to have this render that tells more about like the space that it's in and it's trying to tell a story. Have those renders be at the top because they are usually more impressive to look at. Anything that basically has like a little bit of like it's it's built into a world is always going to be more interesting than just floating in like a void, right? And usually it doesn't take too much time. This is just like a bunch of Megascan assets for the presentation. Totally fine, right? I think that's a good job. Yeah, just have it at the top of your posts. I think that could be cool. Baldur's Gate 3, some potions. Nice, playing around with the presentation. I like it. The Unreal Engine render view. I love that you're doing this. This is awesome. So you can showcase that it's running in real time. My main thing is from a presentation perspective, do a little bit of video editing, go full screen, do the whole thing in rotation, cut out like all the UI, and just have it as like a clean thing, right? Takes maybe a little bit of extra time, maybe a little bit of like video editing. Just grab DaVinci Resolve or something like that. It's super simple to be set up. Spend a little bit more time and have it like look really crisp and clean, right? Post this GIF. Yeah, this one is also like really chaotic, right? It's just because like the UI and the programs kind of jump all over the place. For a process GIF, I tend to mind it less because it's more about like showing the individual steps, right? But yeah, I don't know. It's also something to keep in mind here potentially. Like wherever you can, get rid of the UI, make it a clean presentation, make it professional looking, and try to sort of have it consistent. Try, right? With this amount of programs and this amount of like different UI layouts and all that kind of stuff, it's going to be difficult. But yeah, it's going to be a good thing to try and to have that in your future projects as well. Cool. And again, game art, right? So this is from last year. I want to see wireframes. I want to see textures. I want to see polycounts. All that good stuff. Again, well, I'm not going to elaborate on that necessarily, right? But yeah. Okay. Cool little environment to start out with. I am gonna skip a couple things because I'm curious about something. Okay. Cool. That's good. Love to see that. That's more ArcViz. Let's see. Sorry, I'm just skipping through like a bunch of stuff because I'm just curious to see. Yeah. Okay, so we are doing breakdowns and all that kind of stuff. That is good. Because again, like here, this is like a really interesting piece. And I think it's beautiful. But you're just showing like, hey, this is what I've built. I'm not gonna tell you how I built it, right? And from a game developer perspective, we are always interested in like how you built it. Again, a couple of subtle things to notice. I didn't click the video because I'm just in this habit. Like if it doesn't autoplay, then I'm not watching it, right? Because again, it adds friction, right? So for these things, I would have it on the autoplay videos. There's a couple of things that you can do to like reduce like the file sizes, like download Handbrake. Handbrake is a really lightweight program where you can just like optimize your videos so that you can hopefully optimize them enough so that you can add them to like the autoplay ArtStation feature. So that would be a tip to like circumvent having to use like YouTube videos, especially because it's an 11-second video. Yeah, we should have autoplay. The reason I don't put the wireframes on all the props is because they are not super duper optimized. My optimization is way better now. For example, the recent portfolio pieces, the wireframe is there and DVs. Yeah. Yeah, but here's the thing, right? Like then this kind of stuff, you have to then think about it from like a value perspective if you're showing it to let's say a person, right? Like a recruiter or like an artist that is trying to get you hired, right? We can only base it on like a very superficial level on just like okay the way that you present it and the way that it's lit and then the way that the roughness kind of reflects, right? We get like a very surface level appreciation because to a certain point like you're right, like if you can showcase in your most recent projects um does this one, let's see, do we have a wireframe here somewhere? Yeah. So let's say we see this. I know that you can optimize your wireframe, right? And I know that you know where to allocate your geometry. So there is a certain aspect of like, if you can do something super complex, I know that you can also optimize like a PlayStation, right? So that's definitely being taken into account. But what I want people to realize is that every individual artwork kind of brings its own value to the table, separate from what it's attached to as well, right? That's always something to think about. And I know it's oftentimes difficult to go back to like older work, right? So I'm also not necessarily recommending you to remove it, right? But it's just realizing that the value of those projects has been diminished just because we don't have like all the breakdowns, right? So maybe it's not necessarily that I want you to change anything specifically. It's more that I'm laying the case for anyone else that's looking and is thinking about doing the exact same thing, right? Something to take into account as well. Because yeah, there is definitely it's the same thing when we look at like an entire environment, for example. You don't have to optimize every prop in the environment, right? Well, you kind of have to, but like in a very simple way, right? But you only need to show off like your most complex prop and then showcase that as a showcase of like, hey, I can do retopology, I can optimize this, like you're all fine, right? But showcasing that you've done all the props is kind of like a waste of time because you can't show all of them as an example, right? I don't know. Hope that makes sense. Hello, Denise. Hope you are doing well. But yeah, yeah. Thanks for adding the additional context though to the podcast. Or Lars, I would say. It is good to have that additional context. And yeah, sometimes it is. I realize that it's also tricky to go back to older work and having to redo it. It's not worth it. It's honestly not worth it, and it also sucks. Okay, let's continue on. Interesting. The first thing that I'm looking at here is like a bunch of duplicate screenshots, right? So I would pick either one, where it's like you have the videos or you have the screenshots. Yeah, probably remove this one, right? That's just showing all the shots. This can be removed easily because you have like all the individual shots in here anyway, right? I think that's cool. But yeah, we haven't even talked about like the artwork itself, right? But I think it's really really nice. I like it from like a visual perspective. I like the colors. I like the choice of the architecture, and like it's very very serene. Like very, I don't know, feels yeah, very serene is probably the best way that I can say it. Very artistic. What's the GIF? Was cool to see. I'll say why these are like really cool to look at, right? These process GIFs are really handy for me and other people to see how you make your choices of the the individual steps in between, right? So I can see in between the frames, like what did you decide to reduce or emphasize or whatever. It gives us like a really good indication of like the individual steps, right? So for example, it's very subtle stuff, but like increasing the size of the door, then moving the door back a little bit, and then moving it a little bit more forward. Like I can see you balancing items in real time, and that's actually like pretty interesting just to have a look at from like an artistic perspective. Yeah. Cool stuff. All the materials that I made for the project. That is cool. I would say from a presentation perspective, right? I always love to see this in context of the environment, right? So try to come up with a way where you can sort of have your materials and then have how they align um to your to your work like next to each other. because having the context next to each other is really, really nice. After Substance Designer, I modified all the maps in Photoshop to get 100% control over the look. Hmm, that's an interesting one. Because you can interpret that in two ways, right? You can interpret that as like, oh my god, like he really went all out to like create like their own artistic style, right? Or I can also interpret that as in like, wait, you didn't know how to do that in Substance Designer? Hmm, interesting. Because from a production perspective, right? If you start doing this to like all of your materials in the whole world, like that adds like a lot of friction to the pipeline. Um, so yeah, I know I'm tripping up on like small things here, but yeah, be very careful with what you call out. The Photoshop workflow was something that I learned from the course, but I understand your point of view. Yeah, it's not necessarily that like it's necessarily that bad, right? It's more that you're calling it out as like an extra thing, and that causes me to have like a double take and being like, wait, why did you go back to Photoshop? You know, because you're already doing stuff in Substance Designer, and I don't know what you did in Photoshop, but yeah, you can probably do it in Designer too. Anyway, it's small stuff, right? It's small stuff. Let's see. All the knowledge that I learned from Tiago Klafke. Hell yeah, shout out to Tiago. I would like to move to the concept, so hopefully that translated well. The mountain is not made by me. Thank you and bye bye. Hmm. Cool, cool, cool. Good stuff. Yeah, nice one. Your presentation, I think the presentation for like the beauty renders itself, really well done, right? It really shows the project really well. Condense the amount of like images that we have because we're doubling up the videos and the images, right? So that can be solved. And then whenever it comes to this kind of stuff, I want to see it in context. And then also give me an idea of like, what are we looking at in terms of like poly count and all that kind of stuff again, right? Yeah. Cool. Again, 2 years old. So who knows? Might be too old. Let's have a look. I'm curious because we always make our way from like the end of the portfolio to the front, right? So I'm curious to see like how it evolved over time. Orange scene. The goal was realism. Hope you like it. The scene is decal heaven. Yeah, I mean, this could even be cool to show off, right? The scene is decal heaven. Do we have? No, we don't have a breakdown, right? Because even that could be really cool to showcase, like, hey, this is a scene without decals, and this is a scene with decals, right? Like showcasing how much you try to push the environment by using decals. Could be like a really, really interesting thing to just kind of showcase, right? Like a before and after. Because some of the most interesting posts. So, for example, I'll give Felix like another shout out. I bring up his work like a lot, but like when you look at, for example, this is my favorite breakdown to go to, and it starts with this, and it's literally just showcasing like, hey, this is the way that this environment is built up, right? Um, and something like that always adds additional um additional value, right? Because I can see the way that you've added like all the layers to your environment, which is really cool. So yeah. There was a decal render scene, but some people said it was too much, so I deleted it. I mean, I expect it's going to be a lot, right? Because it is more architectural visualization rather than game art, I would assume, right? Or that's at least the vibes that we're getting. But you do have certain projects like Mirror's Edge, for example, right? It's very reminiscent towards something like this. And if you can showcase, like, hey, I pushed the realism, can be very relevant, right? But it's again, what it always comes down to is like you need to not only show the end result, I also want to see how you've made it, right? Because now we're just showing like what you made. I want to see how you made it. Always comes down to the same thing. Because it is pretty. It is pretty, and it is really nice to look at. And I like the way that you rendered it in the end, and it is using bait lighting and all that kind of stuff. There's like a lot of opportunities here that we're leaving onto the table because we're not really putting an emphasis on it in the portfolio itself. Yeah, it is a cool scene though. I do really like it. Bum bum bum. I remember this one from 3 years ago. Oh my god, this is already 3 years ago. God dang it, time flies. I remember having a look at this for yeah, what was it again? Portfolio reviews or something like that? I can't remember. Oh no, it was the Golden Vent event, right? So this is like what I occasionally do, and I was involved with it this year as well, is whenever people go into like their first modularity course, I think, right? Um I'm involved with giving them feedback as well on the final results. Or like not feedback, but like the judging of it. It's like really interesting. 3 years ago. Hmm. Yeah. A lot of cool breakdowns. You can even tell in these, right? Like the way that you present your work now is way better. Like 3-point lighting, knowing how to accentuate the silhouettes, like all that kind of stuff. You've learned a lot in that time, and it really shows already, right? Even if we're not looking at things in chronological order, it might even call into. Well, we'll get into that to the end. Like I'll leave that to the end. Yeah. This is really interesting, Like even back then, I really liked it. I think it was like one of my favorites from like the entire batch that we had to look at. Yeah, cool, cool, cool. And then this is more recent work. Um, One thing that I always try to note, and this is not affecting in any way your chances of getting the job, right? But what I always find interesting is to look at the consistency of a person's work, right? So what I mean by that is that we looked at a lot of things where it's like 2 years ago, 2 years ago, last year. So this is actually more recent. 2 years ago, 2 years ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And now we're getting back into the recent stuff, right? And I assume that also has to do with like your internship and all the other stuff you had to do, right? So that's why I'm saying it doesn't really matter all too much, but I'd like to. This is something that I personally attach a lot of. I not even from like a recruitment perspective, right? So don't take this as like recruitment advice, but I personally attach a lot to people's consistency when they put out to work. And let's have a look. So this is a freelance project. That's the thing that we had a look at on your LinkedIn as well. So there were no other environment artists on the team, so I had to make my own workflow. I learned a lot and made a good master material that I'll be able to use in the future. Um, Maybe that future project is almost done. Wink. Maybe. I mean, it's still whip here, so probably not, right? I'm just messing. So let's see. What was done here? So yeah, this stuff becomes like way more interesting to already start to have a look at, right? Because you're showcasing your master material, the flexibility of it, like how in depth you went with it, like how many materials we use. There's a lot of really cool stuff that we're already seeing here, just because you're breaking it down, right? So this stuff is really cool to see, and it's all presented. It's it's very basic, right? Like this is not like edited or anything like that. But again, just like showcasing the material and you're showcasing like all the parameters, already super interesting to have a look at from like a breakdown perspective. Yeah, detail normals. Cool, cool, cool. Yeah. So this is where it gets super interesting, right? Like you see a lot of game art breakdowns. Like there's a lot for us to dig into, and I can really see the the thought process behind it all. Shitty Podcast is saying the showcase parameters should be faster. Yeah, I mean, so here's the thing, right? Like when I look at your entire portfolio, I'm already like super happy that we have the breakdowns already in general, right? I'm super stoked about that. And then anything that we add on top of that, maybe it should be a little bit faster. Maybe you need to call out what is changing, with like a little text overlay. That is all additional fluff. It is relevant for the presentation, but I'm already happy to see that a lot of the presentation is changing in like the recent projects. That's what I'm super happy about already. And all the other stuff, like sure, would it be nice to have it like full screen, and then instead of like showing the parameters, you just showcase like, hey, here's where I'm changing the roughness, and it has like a little text overlay. That's all additional to it, right? It's nice to do, but yeah. Screenshot with the biggest kind of dragon. The dragon model not made by me. I also love that it's just like flicking straight as an arrow. And then you got the walkthrough as well. Yeah, cool stuff. Yeah, this was cool. Like it's a smaller project compared to what we saw previously, but there's more stuff to dig into here. Like this is really interesting. Dun, dun, dun. I use quick mega scans for larger cliffs and small rocks in the environment. Blah, blah, blah. I wanted to create all the assets myself, but the client wanted me to use mega scans for the project. Yeah, that's fine. Restrictions of professional projects. But that's cool. I like how you integrated it though. Like it looks quite nice. Cool, cool, cool. Yeah. Good showcase. Interesting. And then we've got the whip project. I've already said my piece about like having whip on the project. But let's dive into the breakdown because yeah, there's some interesting stuff happening here. Mm-mm-mm. Oh, my Spotify just died. What the hell was that? Okay. Let's see. Presentation, really well done. Like very striking, good presentation from the get-go. Really nice, like highlighting all the roughness variation. Really good job there. Showing additional variations. That's cool. The asset was made with a third person camera in mind. Again, small stuff again. Go full screen, do a screen capture then, clean up some of the UI. Way more professional, right? Let's see. Um, cool. Okay, so now we're getting into the interesting area, right? So texture set one is you just use it on these areas, which is cool to see. I do like the way that you're already starting to visualize it. There's a little bit of just like random clutter here. I don't I don't know if that's let me see. I think that could just be the presentation. Anyway, so I like the way that you're presenting this already. This is awesome, right? It clearly shows me like, okay, three texture sets, how you use them. I would say the main thing that is missing here is just the size of the textures, right? Showcasing me like if this is like smaller stuff. Is this a 1K texture? Or is this like a 2K texture? That would be interesting to add. But already like where this is going. This is a great step in your presentation. Yeah, awesome stuff, man. This is good. Let me see. Let me see. Yeah, so we have this here which showcases like the triangles and like the modularity of the workflow. This is a bit it's a bit hard to read. So try to think about the way that you present this, right? I could potentially think about a way where Again, you're gonna have to dive into Photoshop a little bit for this, but like almost have like the final rendered versions, and then pick apart like the individual pieces, and then just color code them together, so that I know like, oh, this card is made up by these pieces using these colors, kind of thing. Because yeah, you're kind of doing that here, right? Like using the built-in Blender colors. It's just, yeah, it's chaos. It's not clear to read. What I would also do is say you have this with the material added on top of it, and then have a clear to read like triangle count, texture count, all that kind of stuff. So basically trying to combine, I mean, it's going to be a lot of information, so maybe combining is not the best thing. Um, yeah, make like one render about like the wireframe and the poly count and all that kind of stuff. And then you have your additional image where you talk about like how it was built. The blur is weird on the UV thingy. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate, and that would be like a thing to solve or potentially solve. But it's okay, you know? Because the main information that I want to grab from here is just what is the texture used on, right? Um, and I think that's clearly being showcased here. Ta-da! I wanted to create a YouTube series of making the asset. That's cool. That's cool. I've tried to do that a couple of times myself as well, and then you realize like how much time it takes because now you're just stuck with like hours and hours and hours of unedited content that you need to slap together somehow. Yeah, it is cool though. It's cool to see it. Yeah. Now, well, the thing to do here is to finish the project, right? That would be the next thing to do. Yeah, cool stuff though. Cool stuff. I think this is a really interesting project. It also what I also do really like is that the two more recent projects, they're a clear showcase of what you want to do, right? Because in here, sure, I know that this is like uni work and all that kind of stuff, right? So you have your restrictions, but just think about it from a portfolio presentation, right? If you say, "Hey, I want to work on medieval shit," um, if we ignore that you said that and we just only look at the work, that is not clear just yet, right? Because it is literally just like all over the place in terms of what you want to do, right? There should be bodies on the wagon. That's why it's whip. My friend is making them, but it's taking some time. I'm thinking of just removing the whip. Yeah, if this is your part of the project, um, yeah, I would just remove the whip then and just like present it like that as well. And then whenever your friend is done with making the bodies, then you can still add them, right? Um, yeah. I would also say, and this is more like from like an artistic direction perspective, right? If you are going to do a presentation like this, think about the 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 asset in context of the environment, right? The environment is fucking caked full of mud, and your asset is like super dry, right? There's almost no interaction, or there's no seeming interaction between like the ground and the actual cart. So think about that, the connection between the environment and the prop that it's in. That is something that would like really enhance the look and the feel of this. You know, where even if you just make like a couple of quick decals or maybe a couple of like mud assets and you just use them on top of the cart, that's gonna drastically change the look of it, and it's gonna feel like way better. And then you can have the clean version still here, right? But for the final presentation, that will look awesome. Yeah. Also be aware of like clipping, all that kind of stuff, right? Like give your give your asset like a little bit of room to breathe. Like I don't mind on detail shots, right? But if you're trying to show the whole thing, give it some space to breathe into frame. Anyway, I was talking about like your alignment, right? So that's something to think about. I know that this is like a portfolio that's like somewhat in transition, right? Because you're going from like, hey, this is all my student work, and then you're going into like, hey, this is the shit that I fucking love to do, right? So I know that that transition takes time, but that is something to keep in mind for the future as you build your next project, right? Because I I always love that people have like a thing where they say like, hey, look, I'm a fan of this, but what is always important is actions over just talking about it, right? Um, so yeah, I know that that takes time, but that would be like already a thing to keep in mind in the future. Cool. Okay. So how do we think about the whole portfolio? Let's go back here. Again, you say I like medieval games, so working for Warhorse, CD Projekt, Techland, Larian would be nice. Cool, cool, cool. Yeah. So where do we go from here, right? Because I'd like these two projects, the way that you're presenting them, the way that you're breaking them down, awesome stuff here. I think these two are like immensely valuable to your portfolio already. When we go to some of the older works, that's where it becomes more purely about the visuals rather than the breakdowns, right? So that is something to keep in mind. Um, so we're already going to make a note of that. So older work was missing breakdowns. Um, and rely too much on Sketchfab for additional details, right? We said that I don't expect you to go like back to the old work, right? So I'm taking it less into account because you are showing off that you can do a good breakdown of your most recent work, right? So keep that up, keep increasing the presentation value of those breakdowns, right? Like try to make them even more interesting and spend a bunch of time on it because that's where a lot of the value is for employers, right? I'll also make an interesting side note. So work on more medieval stuff. You're probably already doing that anyway, so I'm just saying what you're already doing going forward, and like really carve out your niche, right? In that, because that's going to be really interesting for an employer to kind of have a look at, right? I don't think medieval games are going to go anywhere like any soon. So you're always going to have like some sort of like work in relation to that. Yeah. So let's talk about some positives. Overall, the portfolio is really well presented. From an artistic perspective, especially, right? I think I think all the stuff that you have on there shows high quality, whether that is like individual assets or smaller scenes to bigger scenes, right? I like that you are diving into more detailed assets, right? And you're really trying to take the complexity to the next level, which is awesome. And even like working on like the finer details where you have like the little pieces of like I don't know fabric around like the ropes and all that kind of stuff, right? Um, yeah, that is where the juice is at, right? Like that's the stuff that I want to see more. Like that attention to detail is what's going to set you apart, right? Um, but yeah. I'm not finding work at the moment, and it's exhausting to keep focusing on the portfolio. So currently, I'm trying to break into the industry by working for free for indie studios here in Belgium because I'm not finding any work. It's really hard, and mentally, I'm kind of pooped. Well, here's also the thing, right? Like, if you're going to be working for free for indie companies inside of Belgium, man, I would honestly make the argument that, and this honestly, I'm just going to throw it out as a recommendation, perhaps, right? Whatever you do with that is up to you. I think it might actually be better. I think it might actually be better to just like get any job that brings in money and maybe is less of a burden on you creatively, so that you can then have more energy to work on your portfolio, right? Because from one aspect, um, you are getting work experience, but you are extending the time that it will take for you to put more work on your portfolio, right? And of course, this is a recommendation that comes purely from like a logical perspective, right? You have to apply the mental aspect as well, right? Um, so that's why I'm saying it's a recommendation. You have to decide what you want to do with that, right? I do the free work for experience. Yeah, but there's also a point where, and it's not necessarily a bad thing necessarily, right? I mean, I'm not really a big fan of just like the especially the Belgian culture about like free work when it comes to like students and all that kind of stuff. I'm generally not a fan of it. Never was, never will be. I think your work and your experience needs to be compensated, but there's also the hard reality of the current industry that it is really difficult to find jobs, and that the current market is like really difficult to break into, right? So those two are at odds with each other. Um, but I would still say like if it was me, I would probably take something that is just not creative at all, and then maybe do a part-time job or something like that if you can find that, and then just work on portfolio projects as much as you can. Stefan Collins is saying limited to 1 or 2 days a week if you have to work for free and get any part-time job for money. That's also not a bad idea. That's also not a bad idea. Yeah, I like that. But here's the thing, right? Like, you have to decide that for yourself, Lars. You have to decide that for yourself. Like, we're just giving recommendations, and it's up to you what you do with that, right? Um, but it is hard. But it's almost making a choice of like, hey, if I spend more time working for free for someone else, that gives me less time to work on my own stuff that could potentially increase my chances of getting into the industry, right? So it's like, how do you balance those two things? And it's not an easy thing. Everyone kind of has to figure it out for themselves. Um, cool. Where were we? So I was saying your portfolio is really well presented from like an artistic perspective, right? Really good first impression. And I mean, even if you go into it like you have the artistic talent and the skills, right? It's very represented, and you showcase a good knowledge of lighting, color theory. You know how to present things. And with a more recent project, we're kind of seeing your technical prowess come into play as well, which is good, right? But I think also that might be a thing that has held you back in the past, where you're not really showcasing your technical prowess enough for companies to be convinced about hiring you immediately, right? So that is definitely something that can give you like a leg up, right, in the future. So keep that in mind. You might also get to a point where the value of some of the older projects, where you only show the visuals and you don't talk about like the game art, you don't talk about the optimization and how you've done stuff. At a certain point, you're going to have to make a decision whether it's worth it to keep some of these older projects and to really double down onto the newer projects that do show a lot of that stuff, right? Because there's also a place where I can see where you're going towards, right? These two latest projects are pretty much in line, and that is what you want to do. It is just that the stuff that came behind it or after it is a little bit all over the place in terms of like the style that it wants to go for, the subject matter that it talks about, and also just like the industry that it can apply to, right? Because you also have like a bit more arc fizz in here from the looks of it, or it kind of feels more arc fizz than your real-time environments kind of stuff, right? That is also something to keep into account. So all that being said is, yeah, you're going to keep building up your skills right now. You're going to keep building up your personal work, and that is going to allow you to carve out like a section for yourself that is going to make it more interesting to hire you in the future, right? And that means that you have to let go of some of the older stuff, the older work as well in your portfolio. Let's not make it too negative here. So overall, the presentation is really well presented from an artistic perspective, and it's clearly showcasing a good trajectory. Keep pushing yourself and your presentation. You don't have to give me a score. I don't like points. Oh, that's okay. Like we can kind of do it just for the fun of it. I'm gonna ask you a question though. The work that you're doing for the indie projects, is that going to be relevant for your portfolio in any way? As a random question. The work is not relevant. Yeah. The reason why I asked that question specifically is just because that also gives me an idea of like, it would be one nice thing where, let's say there's like an indie studio in Belgium that's working on like a medieval city builder or something like that, right? Then it's like, okay, work for free because that's 100% aligned with what you do. And even if you become a part of the team and maybe there's revenue share and whatever, right? Even if like the game doesn't launch, you can still use the work to like boost your portfolio, right? So it's to your benefit as well. Whereas if you're doing something for just game game relevant experience, I don't know, it becomes like a little bit harder to justify, right? Again, these are just like recommendations, right? So the art is not got good. It's just to get experience, to get to know new people. Yeah, that's what I'm saying, right? Like it's easy for me to talk about it from like a very pragmatic perspective, but it's also like you have to take into like your mental sanity, and get to know more people and all that kind of stuff is good. Um, I would say that on the opposite side, there's also like more efficient ways to probably get to know people, right? I know, for example, that like Gamescom is around the corner, right? I don't know if you're going at all. And I know that I can imagine that you're probably also going to be like a little bit strapped for cash, as a lot of people are, right? But there are, for example, opportunities where you can talk to I think the VAF, like the Vlaams Audiovisueel Fonds or something like that, because they are going there, and sometimes they will invite like, or they will ask for what's the volunteers to help run the booth and all that kind of stuff, right? And they'll pay for like your stay and all that kind of stuff. And that gives you an opportunity to get to know a lot more people that are not just like limited to like your local area, whatever that may be, right? Um, and yeah, also like, I mean, it's easy for me to say, but like engage with like Discord communities, right? Like hop into voice calls, get to know people there wherever you can. I know it's a lot probably, right? Because I'm asking you to do things on top of your already busy schedule. But yeah, there are opportunities out there to get to know people probably in more efficient ways. Cool. So I gave you some numbers. But yeah, I think honestly, so here's the reason why I love getting the number, and I'm only gonna talk about like hireability for you, right? I think your portfolio has like a good hireability, I love I love the way that you render your work, right? Like from like an artistic perspective, I can see that you have the skills, the technical skills, and the know-how to like build environments, and you build them in the correct way, and you're really pushing the details, right? All that stuff is going in the correct direction. And that's why your hireability is like actually pretty high, right? I do want to mention that because even especially in these times, it is just difficult to get a job, right? It's not something to underestimate. Like you're doing all the right things, and I like the trajectory. Like you have a good trajectory going forward. I think I think the main thing here is honestly just yeah, sticking with it long enough until the door opens, right? Yeah, I think that's the thing. You just have to stick around until like that door opens for you. And also, like try to think outside of the box, right? Like reach out to people that work in the companies that you shouted out, right? Like Warhorse, CD Projekt, Techland. Talk to people at that company and say like, "Hey, I know that you're an artist working for this company. I would love it if you could give me like a bit of your time and share like a couple of tips and tricks on how I can align my portfolio better to the work that you're doing for this company." And just send that to like a ton of people and see what you get back, right? That might be super helpful because I already appreciate that you're here, right? And you're getting a portfolio review from me. But what the main benefit is of talking to those people at those companies is that it puts you on their radar, right? And maybe some of them are going to be like, "Hey, this random guy just reached out to me. I know that we have like an upcoming thing coming up, and he looks like, oh my god, he has like all the skills, right?" You never know when that connection happens if you happen to make a good impression. So, for that, you have to put yourself out there. You have to reach out to people. You have to make yourself known. But yeah, that can also help with your future too. I will definitely have a call or mail with some people from the VAF. Thanks for letting me know. Yeah, there's probably gonna be other organizations or God. Yeah, I know that for example, Gamescom themselves, they do also do a call for volunteers as well, but you have to be like a German citizen, so you can't really apply for that. Um, but I'm sure that there's like more opportunities out there. Maybe even go talk to some of the advisors that you had at school, right? Like go talk to them, see if they know like a way or a person that could get you more involved with like local groups or something at Gamescom or something at Develop or whatever it may be, right? I think that's something that I personally also like underestimated for the longest time is just like your connections within the industry and how to leverage them, that sounds like such like LinkedIn CEO speak. But there is something to it, right? Like if you make genuine connections with people, like you help them out, they help you out, like you can build some like really long-term relationships with people that can be relevant to your career growth as well. We talking Gamescom? Yeah, a little bit. Like we're talking about Gamescom in relation to like it could be potential opportunities for people to connect with other developers, and then maybe that opens doors, and from that kind of perspective. But yeah, thanks, Lars. I would say best of luck with it all. I know that's not easy, but keep hanging in there. Keep pushing out great work. At a certain point, also consider removing some of the older work, right? That is less aligned with where you want to go, and then keep building on there, right? I'll talk with the advisors like Dries and Alexander. Yeah, I went to like Dries was in my class. Interestingly enough, but that's good. You're talking to people, and the advice was same like anyone else's. Work in ArcViz, advertisement, CAD. It's pretty sad. Um, it is good advice, right? It is good advice. Well, it is solid pragmatic advice, which is why I'm sort of a fan of it. I'll tell you the reason why I'm not a fan of it is because it's also asking you to give up, you know? And I'll be open and honest, right? Like this is the thing that I struggle with as well. Like if I were to give you advice of like what to do, it's really tricky, right? Because I want to lean into saying like, "Hey, double down, do more work, like be more focused, focus on quality, reach out to more people." And that makes a lot of sense to me. But yeah, there's also another side of it where maybe it does make sense to like dip your feet into like, hey, reaching out to some like ArcViz studio somewhere and seeing if you get a job, because at least then you're doing a job that is somewhat related to the field and that allows you to be creative, do some ArcViz, and then in the evenings you can build on your portfolio and you're getting paid for it, right? That's also a big thing. Um, yeah. So it's very personal in the way that like if you don't agree, or if your heart says that is not the right advice for you, you just have to then take that to, okay, what is the thing that I do want to do, right? And if that thing is 100,000% games, then you are just gonna have to think outside the box. And that's why I'm recommending these like seemingly weird things, right? Like go on LinkedIn, find people that work at like the companies that you want to work for, find the artists that work for that company, try to build connections with them, try to ask them for a review here and there. If you are happening to be in like, I don't know, the same region or the same event, try to see if they want to talk to you. Wherever you can get an opportunity to get in contact with people and work, try to take it. Try to take it, because that's honestly, from my time in the industry, networking and your connections is where it's at most of the time. So that would be my recommendation. McPal is saying, I think I will be able to make it to Gamescom this year, so that's exciting. Let's go! Let's go, McPal. But thank you for the portfolio review. Yeah. And thank you for sharing your work, man. And again, best of luck. You got this. I know it's difficult. I know the industry is trying to take you down, but over time, the industry and the jobs are going to come back. They're going to look slightly different, all that kind of stuff. But you're going to be ready for when that time happens. And you can put yourself in a position. I think it would also be good. And here's some advice for everyone out there, right? Who's like getting a bit demotivated or like a bit shaken up by just like the current state of industry. It is, go back to the roots of why you wanted to do 3D in the first place. Because I can guarantee you there's nothing better than to just do a fun project that doesn't have to be on your portfolio and you're just ignoring the news for a week. There's nothing better for the soul if you have like that truly creative drive to create things. Um Man, there's nothing better than that. That is where it's at, because I think if you look at your work as a function of getting you a job all the time, that is also grinding you down at a certain point too, right? So sometimes it's good to just say like, hey, look, I'm just gonna go back. I'm just gonna make something for fun. I'm not even gonna post it in my portfolio. I don't fucking care. I'm just gonna do this for fun. That is more energizing than anything else, I would say. So Tish is asking, when will the job market go back to being normal? Well, here's the thing. The job market that we knew a couple of years ago is dead. I'm not going to make it sound like we're going to go back, because the games industry is changing. So, and that sounds like very doom and gloom, right? That also doesn't mean that there's going to be no jobs in the future anymore. It means that the normal way that we look at, for example, getting into AAA, which was like the safe and stable thing to do for a lot of developers out there or like students out there, that is no longer a thing necessarily. Because what we're seeing, and this is something that we talked about in the beginning of our chat today, is that we see shrinking happening in individual companies, right? So, like the bigger companies, bigger AAA companies, they're sort of shrinking headcount, right? What is also happening at the same time is that external development is growing steadily, right? To counteract the balance a little bit. So what is going to be more common is that instead of your future looking like it's going to be part of like a AAA studio, the chance of that happening is probably going to be smaller relative to the overall pool, and the chance of you joining an outsourced company or a co-development studio or whatever, like an external developer, is probably going to be larger. So that also means that we need to shift our thinking away from applying to, let's say, like all the Ubisofts and the EAs and all that kind of stuff. And now we need to look at like who they work with and how you can get to work for those companies. That's a thing. That's a thing to keep into account. And that's where the change is happening now. So I don't think we're ever going to go back to like the way that it was, because that way wasn't sustainable. It just means that the current new system that's being developed, that's a thing that I want you to prepare you for, right? Hopefully that makes sense. Because I do not believe in like the doom and gloom scenarios, you know, like the YouTuber thumbnails and all that kind of stuff where like the industry is dying. It's like, no, dude, games are not going anywhere. No chance. And game developers are not going anywhere. It's just the way that we create games is changing. And the financial formatting in the studios are kind of adapting to a new reality. So we have to do the same thing too. Yeah, exactly, McFall. Xbox did what? Oh my god, game market ruined forever. You know, and man. So obviously the stuff that Xbox done, like in being in the news and all that kind of stuff, fucking sucks, right? And it's horrific for all the people impacted. A lot of people that we know and have been a part of Beyond Extend and have grown to be like successful artists, they have also been impacted. There are people across the whole spectrum that have been impacted by this. There are people that I look up to that have been impacted by this. It just sucks, you know? But I also think that if you are a student now, you and you keep developing your skills, you're going to be in like a really good position in let's say you're a starting student now, right? You're at the start of your career, you're just into uni, let's say second year uni. I think you're going to be in like a pretty good position in like the next 2 years, because the game market is going to stabilize. We're going to find new avenues. Like people are going to find ways to make the games cheaper. There's going to be like a new wave of like indie studios and double A studios and all that kind of stuff, right? There's going to be like a new ecosystem that has a drive to make things differently, right? And I think you've already see some studios doing the exact same thing. Where I was looking at like a developer kind of like, I don't know, marketing from like War Dogs. What's the company called again? Bulkhead, right? It's interesting to see like how they changed the marketing, and that they're doing stuff where it's like they're just playing the game with the team, and that becomes like their marketing material. And you know, it's the games industry is changing because they realize that even gamers right now are realizing like, hey, look, like AAA, sure, it does big numbers, but there's a fatigue going around it as well. Apart from the stuff that really shines, you know. Anyway, yeah. So I think we are just gonna see like a new era of the games industry rather than it going back to what it was before. Okay, going back to portfolio reviews because we got a second person to interview. So Tish, thank you for the question. If anyone else in the chat has a question about games, environment art, anything like that, feel free to ask me and we'll talk about it, right? Anyway, let's jump into our second portfolio review. From Elian, Zuniga, a 3D prop and environment artist specialized in realistic environments for games. I'm a graduate of UNIAT. UNIAT? I have no idea what that is. Let me see. Is that in here somewhere? University of Advanced Technologies. Oh, okay, cool. Cool. Oh, and you were an instructor there as well. Okay, so you graduated and then you became an instructor? Interesting. Interesting. Wait a minute. Did you skip my portfolio? Oh my god. No, I just did like a speed portfolio review. Like the one we did back in the day, a couple of years ago when I had to review your portfolio in a minute. I remember that. Oh, 10 seconds? Oh shit. I didn't even know it was like even shorter than a minute. Let's see. Elian, let's see. So my professional goals are to work as an environment artist, prop artist, or vegetation artist in the video games industry, or the film industry if possible. Okay. What changes and/or improvements do you recommend to make in my portfolio? So, environment art, prop art, and vegetation. That's already just trying to capture a whole bunch of things where every individual thing has like big specialization goals, right? So that's already a wide net that you're casting, and I'm already on the lookout to just see if I can see that being reflected. Even from the thumbnails, I'm not seeing anything that could be relevant to foliage, for example, right? There is a little bit of grass, but like honestly, as a foliage artist, like grass is the simplest thing to make, at least in my opinion. So I want to see you make like really complex trees and all that kind of stuff, right? There is this great example from I forgot his name. Where is it? Adrien, right? This is a foliage art portfolio. Like if I were to give an example, this is a person who loves foliage through and through because that's all they do. So if you want to become a foliage artist, this should be like a goal to have for your portfolio, right? Just so that immediately I can tell, like, hey, this person does foliage. Okay, if we ever need foliage, I'm gonna reach out to this person, right? And that's basically what you need to design your portfolio around as well. Cool. And then you also have props as well, but let me do a quick scan, right? Okay, that's environment stuff. Props are really basic. Project breakdown coming soon. 5 months ago. I don't think that's gonna happen. I know I'm being very crude here, right? But yeah, that's the way that people look at your portfolio, right? So again, no props. I don't see any props happening in this portfolio either. So I would already say you can say one thing, but I can look at your portfolio and visual there's no visual proof of you wanting to do that, right? So that's already something to keep in mind as well. Because the thing that I do see is environments and materials. Those are the two things that I do see, but the others, yeah. Anyway, let's have a look. So you have all of your skills in here. Let's see. So solid knowledge in 3D modeling, sculpting, blah blah blah. Solid knowledge using industry software such as okay, and I have experience in here. This is cool to have on your CV. I wouldn't add that in here on your portfolio. I would set up a PDF and then just say like you go to your LinkedIn and add your you got a show reel, you got this. I would say that it is probably better to have like a PDF in here and then have all those individual things broken down in a CV. Way better way of formatting it because then you can just hand someone a piece of paper and have everything they need to know, including all your skills and programs that you know and love. Right? So better way of doing that for sure. Let's see. Art and design for video games. I want to check this school out. That sounds interesting. In Guadalajara, in Mexico. Cool, cool, cool. Let's go, team challenge. Yeah, nice. You're getting some good traction on your posts as well. Got a decent number of followers. That is pretty good in terms of just like, getting traction on whatever you post, right? So that is good. I would say keep that up in terms of like social media presence because yeah, you kind of know what you're doing there, which is good. Love to see it. Cool. So let's dive into the portfolio then. ZBrush sculpt to the wall. Again, we're not going to give like art feedback, right? I'm going to stay away from that. We're just going to focus on presentation and all that kind of stuff. You have a logo. Interesting. Couple of notes on the logo is that like environment artist underneath it is like barely readable. Probably just honestly just simplifying it, like if you just have like the E with the fade out with like maybe a border around that or something like that, that is like enough, right? To kind of give it like a little bit of space. I did show, for example, Martin Hoff, right? He has like a very simple way of just adding like his initials to his portfolio. Very clean layout. And that consistency also makes it look like whenever you see like the MH now, you know it's going to be Martin Hoff, right? It creates like a consistency. So oftentimes going for something more simple and really clear is probably going to be your best bet when it comes to doing any personal branding. It's not easy, by the way. Like coming up with like a logo for yourself is not easy. Cool. Presentation here is interesting. You do have a cutout here. Interesting. So you created the whole thing in ZBrush and then just baked it down and then did your details. Interesting. It's a small side tangent, but like this sort of presentation, I would often prefer to have just like let's say this and then just the squares next to it because it gives me a better read of the individual texture maps compared to just doing this like 45-degree angle breakdown. Cool. Let's continue on. Old asphalt road. Yeah, probably some of the same comments can be made here. What I always like to see, and this is old work, right? But like for future material presentations, I love to see where people like make like a little environment out of it. If even if that is just like a little curb or like a little piece of like a road, like try to find some mega scans, and even if that just means, making. Where's my pen? There it is. Even if that just means like you have like a little curb here where you have like a little sewer grate or like a couple of these metal bars and then you have like a decal here, that shows so much in the way that it can be used inside of an environment, right? I always love when people go like a little bit extra and try to do the presentation that way. You can do like because now it's just a normal titleable, but if you think about the context of where it is added, you can then start thinking about like, oh, but this is where the cars drive, so that's probably where like the water collects, and then you have like water seeping off in like the side entrances. Because now the issue with a material like this is that it is just a titleable, but it doesn't showcase how it would be used inside of a production environment, right? So the closer that we can align ourselves with, hey, this is how it's going to be used in a game, the better it's gonna convince people. You know? So let's try to get as close to that as possible. But let's continue on. Final project for CGMA courses with you, Trombley. Hello, you. Good to see you here, buddy. Yeah, unfortunate about CGMA. So rip CGMA. Yeah, cool to see. Cool to see the legacy of it, though. Project breakdown. Here we go. Props. Modular kit. Looking quite nice. I like the material variation as well. That is cool. And the props here too. Nice collection. Made a lot of stuff. That's awesome. Let's see. I'm trying to see. Yeah. Okay. That's what I also. So here's an issue with this presentation, right? So you see the presentation here, as far as I understand, lockers, cardboard boxes, garbage bag, blah blah blah. Yeah, this is probably Megascan stuff, right? I'm not sure about like all of it. But the issue here is that if you don't read the description, because the description is usually like collapsed, right? I don't know if this wasn't made by you. And if let's say I go with the assumption that it was made by you, and then we talk about it in an interview, now I'm sort of annoyed because I assumed this stuff was yours, right? So it kind of feels like you kind of lied to me. So what I would do with a presentation like this is say, even if you add like props, divide that into props that you made and the props that you use megascans, right? Whether you do that in like a single image, and let's say to the left you have like megascans and to the right you have your own props, that's fine. But yeah, and that would be a thing to really highlight, because you don't want to be in a position where someone thinks that you made all this awesome stuff and then they start asking you questions about it and you're like, oh no, that's just megascans, you know? You want to avoid that as best as you can. And visuals always come first, right? That's an important thing to stress here, is that you can have it in the description, you can have it in the tags, that is okay, but most people rely on the visuals. So try to embed that in your presentation. Let's see. Cool little breakdown here. Oh, yeah. Cool little breakdown. I like it. Really showcasing like, hey, this is what I used. This is how I used it. This is my final topology. Yeah, good stuff. I think in terms of presentation, obviously it can be improved a lot, right? Taking a bit of extra time to do like proper cutouts and to remove the background, and then presenting it in like a clean way, you know. Um, I would always give the recommendation to also have like margins. So what this is like around your page, you want to have like a space where nothing is added, right? So that you're pushing everything into the frame, and individually between all the elements here, you kind of want to have like a little bit of spacing as well. But that's all presentation, right? I'm already super happy to see that you're doing this breakdown and you're explaining what you're doing in detail. That's awesome. Vegetation, using scanned data from real life photos that I took for the project. That's cool. That would be, so things like these would be really cool to showcase, right? Like in one image, you just going out, taking the raw pictures, showcasing like a picture of yourself, taking the pictures, like all that kind of stuff, and then showing the whole pipeline. It'd be really interesting to showcase. Yeah, it's cool. Wintest using the red channel to give more and less influence using the cards in order to have different movement times. That is awesome. That is great stuff, right? Because this feels, you know, you can really tell when people use a simple grass wind, even in my stuff that I do, right? Because I'm too lazy to set something like this up. But this is awesome. Like you thinking about like, hey, there's this default look that is really recognizable. How can I break that up? And then using the red channel to kind of set up like a different mask for it. Really cool. But also showcase how you've done this, right? Because right now it is literally just like a line that a lot of people might skip over. Whereas this is like really cool stuff. Really, really interesting stuff to like try to highlight. But explain an RGB mask shaders. Doo-doo-doo. Cool, cool, cool. Vertex painting as well. Yeah, cool stuff. Cool stuff. I think that was actually like a pretty good breakdown. You know, like the environment itself looks really nice, and then you did like a solid breakdown on top of it. I think the most of the comments that I had was just about like the speed tree. You know, clearly demarcating where you use speed tree and what you created yourself, and then also just like little presentation tips here and there, right? But all the content in here is looking pretty solid. Really clean presentation throughout the thing as well. Yeah, great stuff. And I think the foliage looks really good. Really great looking foliage, especially because the details of like the wind. Yeah, really impressed by that. Great stuff. Okay, cool. Let's move it on. When was this? 2 years ago? 2 years ago. Cool. Another project from Think Tank. I remember seeing this on Whip Wednesday some time ago. Oh, no breakdowns? No. Why? To achieve that, many factors were considered during the development of the project, such as poly count, modularity, texture budget, draw calls, number of instructions for each shader, among others. This is all cool stuff. This is all amazing stuff. The main objective of this project was to create a realistic, playable environment optimized for video games. To achieve that, many factors were considered, such as poly count, modularity, texture budget, draw calls, number of instructions for each shader, among others. Awesome stuff. Why are you not showing this? Why are you not showing this? Oh, this hurts. This hurts. Because now you're like, hey, I just want to let you know that like I've done all this cool stuff. And that's it. What? Come on. Show it to me. Giacomo, come on. You should have told him that. Come on. I'm throwing you under the bus for this one as well. Yeah, no, but it's the reason why I get so hyped about this is because this is a massive opportunity to show your work that is like really relevant stuff for games, but you're not showing any of the cool stuff, right? Unless am I missing a breakdown? I'm not, right? No. There's no breakdown. No. Oh, that sucks. That sucks. It just sucks from like a missed opportunity perspective, you know? Oh well, I guess we're looking at pretty pictures then. I mean, it looks good. Is it like a breakdown in here somewhere? No, it's all pretty pictures. Yeah. I mean, and it looks good. It looks good. I just want to know how you made it, you know? Give me some of that juicy stuff. I guess we're moving right on then. Okay, I want to know. Oh, project breakdown. Thank God. Okay. Oh no. Battery's gonna die as well. Okay, we have some breakdowns. Cool. So let's have a look at this. Let me just plug this in real quick. So, reference shot? Okay. I don't understand why. What is the what is the relevance to a reference shot? Is that just because it's based on like the environment, maybe? Anyway, like you can remove either one of those because it's just doubling up the same information, right? I'm not really learning anything new from like looking at either one of them. So that's a quick decision. Remove one of them. It's gonna be cool. The concept as well. Okay, cool. Let's have a look at the breakdown. Um, I will I will already say from like just a and this is I guess this is more like artistic feedback, right? Um the hero prop is definitely missing, that layer of uniqueness. It feels a little bit too generic, It's just like a bunch of noise, but I'm not really feeling the connection between its environment and where the prop is placed, right? So what I mean by that is like if it's in the water, I'm expecting a lot of just like moisture damage, especially around like where it's been in the water, right? That's not really present. I'm probably expecting like way more details in like the crevices, and then start adding like individual details on certain areas where, let's say, you have like a bit of moss growth, and then maybe outside of it there's like a little bit of foliage kind of hanging from it, right? In a couple of places, but like the layering right now feels a little bit basic. Anyway, that's our feedback. That would be like a thing to kind of take care of. Here's another placement feedback. I don't get to do these that often, but whenever you have like something that's along a straight line, go through the extra effort to kind of break it up at least. That can be scale, rotation, or just like adding additional clumps so that it kind of doesn't feel like a straight line. You want to break that up wherever you can, right? Same thing here because this just looks like it almost feels like it's manicured ivy, just straight line. What I want to see is, sometimes ivy will grow up and then maybe stuff is hanging from here. Maybe it does the same thing here as well, but like in a lesser form. You want to have like a natural spread of ivy, you know? Um, and this volume already like reads way more interesting than the stuff you have now because it's using the surroundings to kind of latch onto and grow in like a very organic manner, right? That can be really cool. And it's a quick thing, right? Because it's just you have your sections of ivy already. You just have to place a couple more here and there. Anyway, art feedback again. Let's dive into the breakdown. Time lapse, props, destroyed modular assets, materials, vegetation. I'm trying to look for some new stuff, right? Because this is very similar in terms of like the previous presentation. Not necessarily in a bad way, but yeah, very reminiscent to stuff that we've already seen. So what I'm curious now is for the hero prop, right? Because this is like a new thing that you're trying to showcase where it's like, hey, I have this one prop that I'm spending like a bunch of details on. Um, yeah, there's not too much to look at here, right? Whenever you're doing like an RGB mask setup, yeah, I would do it in showcasing the final result rather than the individual masking because this just looks like chaos, I want to almost see like you go through like layer by layer and do like a quick like GIF or something like that or a video where you go through the individual layers. That's way more interesting to look at and way more relevant to the recruiters up on the opposite end. Yeah. So that's what I'm kind of missing because this is like a new addition, right? You're saying like, hey, this time I'm going to show a hero prop. And I would expect to see more details, more information. What was the final poly count? How did you use? What kind of layers did you use? What kind of textures did you use? There's like a lot of information missing here, right? This is just like, hey, this is the asset with a quick wireframe, and then this is the RGB masking. That's it. There's not too much to dig in there. Yeah. When was this made? Last year. Cool. What I do like I'm seeing an evolution in attention to detail specifically, right? What I'm really excited about already is just already seeing the texturing on like the bike here. And what already stands out to me is like attention to little details in terms of like the fence being slightly broken. There's like a couple of these tiles that are sticking out. There's, you know, like the bike has like a flat tire. Like all those things create for like a more believable environment already, right? Where you are paying attention to those details. So that's it's looking really cool. God dang it. Project Breakdown coming soon? No. Oh, that sucks. Well, I guess we're just looking at pretty pictures then. I guess we are just looking at pretty pictures then. Such a shame. Such a shame. What is interesting, and this is something that I noticed throughout your work, all of it is made with mentorships, right? And this is bringing up something interesting where you can do mentorships and you probably should do mentorships, right? Because it's a quick way to increase your understanding of certain workflows, your production pipeline knowledge, your attention to detail, like all those things massively increase with the help of a mentor. What that also does is if your entire portfolio is built up with mentorships, there's going to be one question on everyone's mind: how independent can you be? Right? Because if you always attach your work to like someone else as a production studio, I kind of have the question of like, okay, this is all really good and I kind of like the look of it, but how much of it have you done yourself? Right? And how much was influenced by like the people like trying to help you? So the main thing here is, first of all, um, let's start with some good things that I noticed, right? So the project breakdowns that you had are like good. Like when they were available for the project, they were like really good. I think this is still by far the best project breakdown that you've done, and this is like 2 years old. So there's also a part of it that makes it like that makes me like pretty sad, you know, because I wanted to see you evolve your breakdowns and like go even deeper into the cool nerdy stuff that is worth showing off, right? Because you are doing a bunch of cool stuff. Yeah, I want to see you showcase that more. And especially comparing that to the CDMA project that you did with you, right? This kind of goes in line with what I was saying before, that if your presentation was really good when you were doing the CGMA courses, and then the quality of the breakdown specifically kind of dropped down after that, that leads me to believe that you actually didn't have a lot of say in the breakdowns, right? Because if you were doing the breakdowns on your own volition, you would see like a consistent increase in like the quality of them over time, right? But it's really weird what's happening now is that you did a really good breakdown 2 years ago, and then after that, it kind of just like dropped down, and maybe you didn't take them seriously anymore, right? It's like a weird thing happening there. Um, especially for your latest project, like just adding like a breakdown there. There's like an opportunity on the table that's just it's just laying around, right? You're not making use of it. Um, anyway, I will also highlight, yeah, like interesting breakdowns, right? Like you're doing a bunch of really cool stuff that is really worth showing off, and I'd like that you showcase that here. It's just that in the other newer pieces, yeah, I kind of felt a lack of it. However, I also really liked your personal growth when it comes to attention to detail. You can clearly see that this environment is more focused, more attentive to all of the bits of detail, and is trying to showcase, like, you know, all the little interesting bits, and you're paying attention to where you put the flowers and all that kind of stuff. Like, it has like a high bar in terms of attention to detail, which is really good. So I like that transition. I like where that is going. So keep that up for future projects. Yeah, really good stuff. Okay, let's have a look at some of the scores then. So I think higher ability. Let's see. We're gonna go like a little bit lower here because there is still like a lot of stuff missing. I think you are showcasing like interesting visuals, and you are showcasing like a good quality bar. However, there's nothing really to dig in for me, right? Like, if I want to know how good you are on making an individual asset, the only thing that we can grasp on is this guy, and it's not great, right? And I can see that you've done some cool stuff here, but I can't dive into it, right? You're not giving me the opportunity to dive into it. That's why I'm saying like there's a missed opportunity here. Um, let's see. Yeah, same thing here. And then the thing here is like it's pretty old, right? So like 2 years ago, I bet you that you can do way better than just a barrel like this now. I can guarantee it. I can see it, but you're not giving me an opportunity to dive into it, right? So yeah. I would say your artistic that's interesting. So like your artistic skills are like decent to good, but then your techniques are kind of suffering because I can't see things, right? I'm still really impressed with like you thinking ahead with like the foliage shader and all that kind of stuff. That looks really, really good. But then after that, there's nothing really for me to dig into. So that's costing you like a lot of points. Um and also, for example, the RGB masked shader that you use on your hero prop, your tram, right? You use a technique, but then I don't think you're making full use of the technique to really make it look really good, right? Because it just ended up kind of feeling somewhat generic, which is a shame. Um, and because you have the tool, you have an RGB mask that can help you make this thing feel partially submerged and all that kind of stuff, but you decided not to use it, if that makes sense. Which is also like a missed opportunity as well. So yeah, that's where your techniques are kind of going to suffer a little bit. I think presentation, honestly, like I'm pretty happy with the way that you're presenting your work. Nice, consistent way of presenting it. You have like also like pretty ambitious project in here too, which is really cool to see. Um, so yeah, I think you're on a good track there. But yeah, the presentation itself, I think that's more like artistic skill, and then your presentation is going to be somewhat at a 5 because the way that you present your work from like a portfolio perspective is nice and cohesive. Then if you start diving into certain things, like you're thinking about the presentation already to a certain degree because you have like these little banners that look really cool. But then the presentation to dive into these things, really basic stuff, right? You can really elevate this stuff by adding in a couple of little quick gifs or like a little bit of like videos or texture breakdowns. Like there's a lot of stuff missing here, right? So yeah, I hope that makes sense. So, what changes or improvements do you recommend me to make in my portfolio? I would definitely want to see how you would handle like a single prop, you know? Single prop, even is that is like using RGB mask, like the hero prop that you had in like your train station, right? Really push that to a visual fidelity like you would have with like a unique texture, for example. Um that's what I would love to see. And man, I would love to see you do more breakdowns. Like especially when you call it out and you say like, "Hey, breakdown coming soon," but it's 5 months ago. You know that a breakdown is not coming soon, right? Yeah. So lots of opportunity on the table. Have those breakdowns. Um, Focus on even more attention to detail. Like I would honestly be really happy with, let's say, something. Let's pick a good shot. If you make something like this scene, just only this camera angle, right? And then taking it to like the next level. That's what I want to see. Because it can be like a small level, but if you then like start paying to the actual like smaller details, like for example, these boxes have been here for a while, so a little bit of blending here. These planks have been here for a while, so a little bit of blending here. This mesh here looks a little bit basic, so we're gonna add like a little bit more geometric interest here. This pole is kind of like basic in its texturing. The wall is kind of like a little bit noisy. Like all those things, like you can make a small project and you can really focus on the quality bar, right? Because this looks good to great, but we can really push that to the next level to make it fantastic and like really like wow people when they see it, you know? A lot of opportunity here. So that's what I want to see. So yeah, great stuff, Elian. Hope that was helpful. And best of luck to your future submissions. Right. Let's dive into a couple more questions because I think I missed a question from Foxy Kiss. So, hello, I'm making a cave environment with a dragon as a focal point. I like to sculpt the creature myself. Okay. Well, you might be coming to the wrong stream because we don't do anything with characters. But hey, I'll do my best to answer it. Should I mix topology like for an asset or animation? Yeah, if you're doing anything creature, person, or anything like that, you want to showcase like retopologized animation ready wireframes, right? Because especially a dragon, it is definitely gonna be it's definitely gonna be with the intent that it's gonna be animated later, even though you don't animate it yourself, right? Um, I know nothing about animation topology, so I'm curious if there's a way around. Nope. There's no way around. There's no shortcuts. You're just gonna have to do it. That's the thing when it comes to game art and well, especially what sounds like more animation related stuff. There's no shortcuts. If you want to have clean topology, you're gonna have a lot of fun with doing that topology yourself. There are tools that can make it quicker, right? But if you are not a creature artist, but an environment artist, then you shouldn't be making a dragon as a focal point to begin with. Does that make sense? Because right now, what is happening is you're saying, hey, the dragon is a focal point. So I'm going to spend most of my time working on a dragon. And you know what I'm going to see? Like, even if we looked at like portfolio reviews that we just done now, right? If you put a dragon on your portfolio, I'm going to have to assume that you are a creature artist because you made a dragon, right? So if you are an environment artist, you want the focal point of a scene to be a part of the environment, not a dragon, right? Does that make sense? It's almost like you're saying well, it's almost like you're saying I'm a mechanic while sitting behind the counter of your local grocery store. Does that make sense? That's like a completely different thing. That would be funny though. If my like local grocery store has like just a mechanic behind the cashiers still. That would be funny. And the first thing they say is like, "Oh, hello, good morning. I'm actually a mechanic." That would be fun. What if the dragon statue? What if the dragon is a statue or something? Yeah, that is a way around it, right? Where you could kind of turn it into something more static, and then you can turn it into something that is more related to like environments, right? But if you want to have like an actual dragon there, it is just if you look at it from like a time perspective, right? From a time investment perspective, this is what I want people to focus on is if you say, hey, it would be cool to make like an environment, let's say with a dragon, right? And I want the dragon to be the focal point. You are literally saying, hey, the dragon is going to be the most important thing. And if you're going to put that on your portfolio, the focus is going to be on a dragon, not the surrounding elements around it, right? I thought about it, but I was interested more in making it with flesh. Um, yeah, I mean, it sounds like you just want to make a dragon, but that comes with like, if you want to make a dragon, that's fine, but then you have to do like the animation workflow, and you have to clean up the topology and all that kind of stuff to make it portfolio ready. And yeah, you're becoming more of a creature artist at that point. But yeah, it's basically what I'm trying to say, and I'm trying to say it in like the shortest possible way, is that the focal point of your scene kind of decides what you are showcasing yourself to be, if that makes sense. So, like for example, for me, I never had characters in my scenes. I never had dragons in my scenes. I never did any of that because the environment was the focal point, right? And that makes me an environment artist just by showcasing that on the portfolio. I see. Thank you. No worries. No worries. Thank you for the question as well. Thank you for the question. Yeah, cool. I think that's it for today's session. I'm probably going to be cracking on with some work in just a minute. I got some stuff to do. So I will say thank you all for hanging out. Thank you for being here with me the entire way through the portfolio reviews. And yeah, if you wanna sign up, you want to take your environment art to the next level, there's like a link to our website down below. Become a member, share with other people. Highly appreciate that. And yeah, hoping to see you in the community. And yeah, have a good creative rest of your day. See you soon.